Now, if you're dealing with a narcissist, which I'm sure you probably are, or you wouldn't be watching this video, then you know what it's like, and almost nothing you think could possibly shock you about them because they're just heinous and awful to deal with. But there are some things that will absolutely shock you about narcissists. So hang on and let's get started. So, the famous author Gore Vidal actually once was quoted as saying, "You can always spot the narcissist in the room. It's the person who's better looking than you." He was joking, of course, but the best jokes always have, that grain of truth in it. So, the narcissist is the person that wants you to believe and wants to convince you that they're better than you in every way and that you are somehow less worthy than they are, have less value than they do, because that's what they really want you to believe. But the first thing I want you to know is the first shocking fact about narcissists, and that is how many of them that there are. So I'm going to go through some facts with you that I think are pretty shocking. One is that approximately 6% of the population has actually been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. And so, if there are 360 million people in this country, and 6% of them have been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, that's 19,500,000 people. And if each one of those people just narcissistically abuses 5 people in their lifetimes, that's close to 100 million people. So just think about that. And if you apply that same formula to the population of the world, which is 7.5 billion, are you ready for this? 6% of 7.5 billion is 450 million people, okay, that have this narcissistic personality disorder. And if you actually overlay the number of people that lack a conscience or are actually sociopathic as well, then you are up to 697 million people who lack empathy or without a conscience or have narcissistic personality disorder. And if each one of those people just emotionally abuses 5 people in their lifetime, which is probably a low number, then you're actually talking about the potential damage of over 3.4 billion people. Yes, this is the secret global pandemic. And I just want to give a shout out to my friend Bree Bonche, who is the licensed clinical social worker and the designer host of Narcissistic Abuse Support Day, which takes place on June 1st of each year or somewhere around there. And I will actually drop a link below if you are interested in signing up for that free webinar that she hosts every year. I will be taking part in that this year. So, and that's from Bree Bonche. So that's fact number one that I think is absolutely shocking. The next thing that I find absolutely shocking about a narcissist is that it has nothing to do with genetics. It has, well, very little to do with genetics, is what they think. It has everything to do with childhood. And the other shocking fact about their childhood is it doesn't necessarily come from trauma. Yes, it can be from having a traumatic event or things happen in their childhood, but it can also be from having parents who were actually overindulgent with them and gave into them too much or told them how amazing they were in every way. But here's the really key thing about that is that they were praised constantly for the things that they did externally, and they weren't given any sense of feeling valuable on the internal. And that's the thing about narcissists is they have no internal sense of value. And so if they were raised in an environment where everything was about the external, how did you look, what kind of grades did you get, then they might have been ended up being raised with this feeling of a lack of internal sense of value. And so That I think is actually pretty shocking as well. The other little thing about their childhood is that all children are sort of narcissists, as well as especially teens. And so, it's part of the development of the human brain and the human emotions to, start to develop a sense of yourself by being kind of narcissistic and feeling that the world revolves around you. And it's very common for 2-year olds to think that, or even 15-year olds or 16-year-olds. So the thing about narcissism is that while it starts in childhood like that, it actually can't be diagnosed until one becomes an adult. And number three, the shocking thing about narcissism is that it's actually not necessarily an unhealthy thing. Just like a lot of other things with personality types, and narcissism is a personality type, it's actually a trait, unlike some other mental disorders. The thing with narcissism is that we all kind of have an element of narcissism in us. We actually all want to feel seen, heard, and know that we matter. And we actually all want to be validated by people. And so there's a continuum of narcissism that's partially healthy. It's when it gets into the illusions of grandeur and when you're actually feeling no sense of empathy for another human being, and you devalue, degrade, and discard other human beings to the point of emotional abuse that you're actually inflicting on these other human beings. That's when that level of narcissism has risen to a level of being unhealthy. It becomes unhealthy or pathological in the sense that they start to believe that their own pain, their feelings are actually more important than others. And they give no credence or credibility or validation to others for their feelings or for their contributions or their achievements. That's when it's pathological, and that's when it becomes unhealthy. So, and that's where you start to look at the scale of what a narcissist actually is. And I have a video on Am I Married to a Narcissist? And I actually go through the seven different personality traits that psychiatrists look at when they are actually trying to determine whether or not somebody is a narcissist or not. And I will drop a link to that video below. You're going to want to check that out. And if you are a victim of a narcissist and you are so ready for change in your life, give me an I'm ready in the comments right now. The fourth most shocking thing about narcissists is one of the things that I actually found the most shocking when I really started to learn about narcissists, because I had to deal with them so much in my law practice. And that is, they're actually the most scared, most insecure, most fragile personality on earth. You are actually so much stronger than they are. You're the stronger one. You're the more secure one. They know that, and that's why they were attracted to you in the first place, because remember, there's this symbiotic relationship between narcissists and empaths. And I talk more about that in my video on the covert passive aggressive narcissist. So you're going to want to check that out. And I will drop a link to that below as well. But just remember that you are probably an empath, because that's what narcissists are mostly attracted to. They want the person who has the qualities that they don't necessarily have. And they glom onto you and they just kind of drain the life out of you. But that's what's happening in these relationships. Underneath it all, there's this fragile little personality, an empty shell that feels no sense of value. So they attach themselves to people, and people that they think are going to help them feel more valuable. And so they need an endless amount of supply, and they try to get that from that person. They're tremendously insecure. They're tremendously afraid of being rejected or abandoned. And so they act in this heinous way, all to protect their fragile little egos. I recently had a conversation with Dr. Ramani, and as many of my regular viewers know, that I did a lot of series with her. And one of the things that she said that really struck me is that she said that the narcissist is actually a very simple personality to understand. They're not like normal people like you and I, where we are actually pretty complicated, and there are a lot of different things that motivate us and a lot of different things that cause us to do the things that we do, or want the things that we want. Narcissists are actually pretty simple. They're just wanting to try to get as much value from everything out in the world as they possibly can, because they feel so empty inside. It's all about survival for them. So that's the shocking fact, um, that I think is actually the most shocking. And that is that they are the most fragile, scared little creatures on the planet. And number 5, this is the best one, and this is where I come in, and that is that they can be motivated. They can be motivated to behave in certain ways. And that, in my world, I call that motivation leverage or strategy. And if you create enough leverage and you create a strong enough strategy, and you're anticipating what the narcissist is going to do and focusing on you and your case, which is my slay strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you, then you will be able to get them to behave the way you want them to. They're basically 2-year-olds in adult bodies, and you're motivating the 2-year-old to stop having a tantrum. So when 2-year-olds have tantrums, they fall on the floor, they scream, they yell, and they're really just testing. They're testing the parents to see how much they need to scream and yell in order to get what they want. And narcissists do the same thing. They're testing you, they're testing your boundaries, they're testing you constantly. And so when the 2-year-old screams and yells and the parents give in and give the kid the lollipop, then the 2-year-old goes, aha, so all I need to do is scream and yell and fall on the floor and cause a big scene, and they will give in. So next time, I just need to scream louder, scream longer, and cause more of a scene, and they will eventually give in. So I'll just keep on doing this until they eventually give in. And that's what narcissists are doing. And so you have to kind of implement what we call a behavior modification system for narcissists and go, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to actually motivate you into behaving the way I want you to behave. Here's the little kind of thing about narcissists that I also think is sort of maybe shocking fact number 6, and that is that they do know what normal behavior looks like, because they play the part. You know, they may not be able to feel any empathy for you, and they may not be able to give you emotionally what you want, and they may be act absolutely awful and emotionally abusive, but they do know what good behavior looks like. That's how they were able to love bomb you in the first place, in the first phase of the narcissistic relationship. Remember, the narcissistic relationship is love bomb, devalue, discard. And they do sort of vacillate back and forth between all of those different stages of the relationship. But just remember that they do know what they are supposed to do. So you can actually create enough leverage and enough motivation to squeeze them into behaving the way you want them to. And that, to me, is a positive, shocking fact about a narcissist.
Okay, so there are myths out there and there are facts out there. One of them is that the narcissist is going to freak out when you leave. That's actually a myth. Okay, so sometimes the narcissist does not freak out when you leave. Sometimes they really try to hoover you. They actually try to go after you. Oh, please don't leave me. Don't leave me. So I actually have a whole video on what happens when the narcissist knows that you know what's going on. And you definitely are going to want to check that out. What happens when the narcissist knows you know. The next myth is that narcissists are born this way. Some people think that they're born as narcissists. That's not true either. The fact is that they are actually, made. That is like nurture versus nature, right? It's actually nurture. They become narcissists at some point in their childhood because something happened to them that was traumatic in their childhood. It caused them to be constantly in survival mode. And so they felt like they needed to protect themselves. And so they were put into that place of survival all the time. And they remain in that place of survival all the time. It's scarcity to the utmost extreme. And so they are like in protective mode constantly. And inside is this scared little person, but outside is this protector part. And so there's actually a lot around that, but really that's what's going on. And it is a spectrum, by the way. I mean, but all the way to the end of the spectrum is narcissistic personality disorder. So that's the next myth versus fact. The next one is that they are super, super confident. And this is actually kind of along the same lines. People think, and I've seen this all the time, people will come into my office or they'll meet with me online. If I'm coaching somebody from around the world, and they'll be like, oh, you've never seen anybody like this before. They're super, super confident because they do act like that. They have really two halves of themselves. And that's why you see, like, it seems like they're two different people. And sometimes it seems like they love you and they hate you. I actually have a whole video on that as well, because there are like kind of two halves of them. And it's because they have two halves of themselves. They have this little deep inner child that sometimes has been so pushed down deep inside of themselves that they really can't even pull that back out of themselves. They want to kill that deep inner child as much as they possibly can and only have the outer self as much as they possibly can. They don't want that inner child because that inner child is the scared person inside of. They'll do anything to kill that. But the truth of the matter is that they're more afraid of you than you are of them. That is the absolute truth. And they don't want you to know that. And that's how, by the way, you end up creating leverage. That's how, when you go to negotiate with them, you can create strategy, leverage, anticipate, and focus on you. And I do have a whole video on this is the real leverage against narcissists, and you can slay against narcissists. And that is my whole slay methodology. And I want you to write in the comments right now, I can slay, because you can slay against narcissists. I've absolutely helped thousands and thousands of people, and I can definitely help you too. 99% of winning against narcissists is in your mind, and it's also preparing before you get into the room or on that Zoom call or in that conversation with them. It's knowing the tools and having the right strategies and understanding how they think. When you have all of that in your toolkit and at your disposal, you absolutely can shift that dynamic. You absolutely can win against narcissists. In this video, we're going to be exploring the fastest way to spot a narcissist and be able to get in and out of this situation before they may even realize that you're onto them, which is a pretty cool thing. All right. So narcissists, I know they can be so charming. And that's the thing. A lot of people are like, well, what if you're just dealing with a jackass? Well, here's the thing. Narcissists don't come off as jackasses at the beginning. They come off as amazing. They come off as maybe the perfect person on the planet, making it challenging to figure out that you're actually dealing with them and identifying them at first glance. So in this video, I want to equip you with the essential tools and the knowledge that you're going to need to recognize their traits right away. All right. So let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is understand what it is that you're dealing with when you're dealing with a narcissist. A narcissist has no sense of self on the inside. They feel totally and completely empty inside. You know, it's a very, very fragile ego that you're dealing with. It's constantly on the edge. It's almost like glass. It's very empty inside. And so they need as much as you can feed them from the external sources, always needing to feed this beast, always needing to feed from the external. Can you feed me from here or can you feed me from here? And let me explain what I mean by that. I call it diamond level supply or coal level supply. Diamond level supply is how they look to the world, how they look to the world, how they look to the world. Coal level supply is, can I control and debase and demean others? How they look to the world, they will protect and defend that at any cost. That's going to be more important to them than relationships, than anything, you know, because their relationship with themselves is more important than anything else. So they've got this grandiose sense of self, and they need to exaggerate their achievements, exaggerate their talents. They need to constantly highlight their attention and their validation for themselves. So that's going to be more important than anything. They need to discuss their uniqueness, their achievements, and how special they are, especially in comparison to others. So that's the first thing that you'll notice. The second thing is that this lack of empathy. They struggle to understand or care about other people's feelings. Many times they've taken on this ability to maybe mirror what it looks like to care about other people. So they'll be like, oh yes, I see what you mean. So they know what it looks like to pretend to care about other people, but they don't actually care. Deep down inside, they don't actually care about other people other than themselves. They completely disregard anyone else other than themselves. They're not able to form relationships, true real relationships with people. They don't truly care if somebody is sick or if somebody's mother died or if somebody has pain or something like that. They want to do things for others because it might make them look good to do that. You know, bring a basket of something for somebody who's in the hospital because it might make them look good to do that. But they don't actually care about that person or feel anything about that person. They'll do these things to manipulate for their own gain. So that's that you know, complete lack of empathy. As far as red flags and the behavioral patterns, you know, they go after people, especially in that love bombing stage, you know, whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship. They move that relationship along very, very, very quickly. You know, they want to get that to that next stage as quickly as possible. So whoever it is, they make it seem like it's a perfect match. You are perfect. We are soulmates. I can't believe how wonderful we are. Where have you been all my life? Everything is amazing. They can't keep that up for very long because they don't want to have to keep depositing in for very long because they want to start taking withdrawals as soon as they possibly can, because you know they want for themselves as quickly as they possibly can. You know, they want to meet the family or they want to become business partners or they want to do things as quickly as they can because they don't want to have to keep up this ruse of doing something for another person for very long, because they're looking to, when am I going to get something out of this deal? That's the one thing you'll see. They're pushing, rushing, rushing. Let's go to Vegas. Let's get married. Let's move in together. Let's get our checking accounts mixed together. And then they're starting to push the people that you're close to out of the way. And you're going to start to see that devaluing start happening right away. You're going to start to see little digs happening right away. And excessive self-centeredness, always bringing that conversation back to themselves, needing constant admiration, needing constant praise. And then maybe you start to see where they didn't have good relationships with people in their past. There's always maybe something wrong with an ex, or something wrong with their former stepchildren or their former business partner or something. There's always something, where their life hasn't been fair, or maybe they make themselves out to be a victim. They disregard or dismiss other people's achievements or experiences. And then they start using now gaslighting on you. They start manipulating you. You start to find out things about them, things about their past, or they're starting to lie to you, and they're starting to disregard it. They're starting to disregard that reality. You're starting to see, wait a minute, I'm now catching you in situations, and they're actually starting to say, you know what you're seeing, that's not true. That's not reality. You're blowing things up. You're blowing things out of proportion. All of a sudden, you're now starting to become victims of that reality. You agreed to pay me back that money I lent you. That never happened. I never said I was going to pay you back this way. We agreed that was going to be part of the partnership, something like that. You're now starting to become a victim of this gaslighting. You're now starting to become part of their warped reality, and they're starting to future fake you. Oh, come on, you're going to see, it's all going to be better. Why should we talk about this? Let's not talk about this now. Let's focus on the future. They don't ever want to start taking responsibility for current. They only want to ever talk about future, because they don't ever want to have to take responsibility for their past. So they disregard your feelings so that they don't ever have to take responsibility for how they impacted you or how they treated you. Now you're starting to see this lack of accountability, because they don't ever want to have to take responsibility for their actions. So they start to shift blame. They start to shift blame onto others or onto you. There's that lack of remorse, that lack of remorse. As far as body language goes, you'll start to see at the beginning, they might be all into you. They might be dominating you. They might be, at the beginning, it's all consuming. They suck the air out of you. They suck the air out of the relationship, because it's just so all consuming, even if it's in a business relationship. Because I know for me, when I was in a business relationship with a narcissist, it was like that. It was, several emails a day, it was calls a day, because they're so excited about it. And they don't give you a chance to think. They don't give you a chance to breathe. They don't give you a chance to take a moment to think about whether or not this may be the right thing or not. And if you do try to hesitate, they're right there with reasons why to dismiss it, to bat it away. By the way, if you guys have seen this, I'd love to have you comment below. I've seen this, and what other examples you've seen. And as far as body language goes, boundary violations, even if you've said, hey, today's not a good day to come on over, they end up showing up anyway. Because they're like, oh, I'm so excited. I'm so excited about what we're up to or what we're doing or whatever. I mean, I was just dropping something off. I know you said today's not a good day. I'm not staying. I just wanted to drop something off, because they want to like just sort of make it known that I'm here, I'm doing, they ignore your boundaries. They ignore social cues. They ignore your preferences. They're right there. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to see with narcissists right at the beginning of the relationship. If you are a person that maybe wants that, or maybe that you find this flattering, maybe this is kind of what you needed at that time or whatever, it will work on you. And obviously it works for a lot of people because they end up getting a lot of people in their web, in their lair, into their situation, because they are very charming. They know how to mirror you. They use those mirror neurons to kind of figure out what it is that you want and become that. It worked on me. It worked on a lot of different people. And so, but now once you become equipped, once you become knowledgeable, you can start to see it almost as a third person, and you can start to go, wait a minute, I know what's going on here, and not allow that to happen with you again the next time. Right? Once you get out of that, though, they do become public enemy number one, and you go into that discard phase and you start to see where they turn against you. And that's when they start filing unnecessary motions, refusing to give documents to you, say they want to settle and they never do, and rack up the fees and blame it on you and all that sort of thing. So that's when it can get kind of hairy. That's where I come in and I can help you with all that sort of thing. So it makes it difficult, definitely not impossible. And I know how to win. So I know how to help you so that you can get to the other side. So that's why I'm here. That's why I do what I do. I promise you that it is something that you can get through.
Talk about this narcissist and how it kind of opened doors that maybe you hadn't really seen right in front of you.
Yes. I had really reached, this pinnacle of success and thought, I mean, to the point that other lawyers had called the guy that I was merging my practice with and asked if I had cancer. Like why would she walk away from this size of a practice? Like I was literally, at the top of my game. And so I got into this business endeavor with this woman who was, it's one thing to advocate on behalf of others, but when you are for me, in a partnership with someone who's supposed to be your equal, and it was a female, and this person turned out to be what I didn't have the language for at the time, a covert passive aggressive narcissist. Everybody thought she was so nice and she was very charming. And, I didn't speak up when I saw things happening. I felt I was transported back to when I had been bullied as a kid. And I had lived this whole life already, very successful. I thought I had processed all of these emotions from when I had been bullied as a kid for being Asian. Here I'd had this whole big life back in Naples, Florida, where I was on top of my game. I had a lot of friends. I was married. I made my daughter, my life was good, and I had, mind you, I gotten married when I was 19. I had the first time. I had 3 kids by the time I was 22. Because I had dropped out of college, I went back to law school at night and had met my second husband, who I'm still married to now, when I was still in my 20s. I had gone back to University of Miami and gone to night school and went to law school 100% on student loans. And so I had literally gotten out of the trenches, and built this law practice, So I had come up from the ranks. And
So, I really felt like I was on top of my game. And when this happened, I really was very stymied at this point. Confused. I was thinking about it in the middle of the night, ruminating about it, obsessing about it, brushing my teeth in the morning, obsessing about it, talking to my husband, talking to my friends, walking around my house. I just was so feeling this pit in my stomach constantly about this situation. But not sure what was going on in my life at that time. And it really threw me for a loop. Really threw me for a loop.
So what did you do? Because there was a turn of events with this. How did this situation lead you into what you're doing today and what you're now known for?
Yeah. So I ended up going on vacation, and it was only in July of 2019, so we're not talking about all that long ago. I remember going on vacation with my husband and my daughter, and we were in Hawaii. And we went up to the top of a mountain in Mount Haleakala, which I don't know if you've ever done that, but you get up in the morning, you go to sunrise, and it's so beautiful. It's literally like heaven on earth. And my daughter, it's like 2:30 in the morning. It's like you go from like 90 degrees to like 30 degrees, but it's beautiful. I mean, literally stunning. And my daughter, who was 17 at the time, she says, "Mom, oh my gosh, it's beautiful. It's heaven on earth. And I'm up there with the people I love." And my daughter says this, and I said, "Yeah, it is. It's gorgeous. It's heaven on earth." And all I could think about was this narcissistic person. And I thought, no. You do not get to be here. You do not get to be here in heaven on earth. And that was that. The person who walked up that mountain was not the same person who walked down. I literally made a decision in that moment that I was done. And I realized in that moment I was being a victim. And I was every moment that I gave that person, I was allowing myself to be a victim. And I made a decision in that moment. I was getting out of that partnership. And as soon as I got back from vacation, I told her I was done. And I was going to make it, amicable, but of course she couldn't do that. But that's a whole other thing. But I decided I was going to finish my book, Negotiate Like You Matter, which I sent it out for endorsements. And I didn't even know Robert Shapiro, but he immediately emails me back and says, "Call me." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I called him, and he says, he offers to write the foreword for the book. So like magic starts to happen. And during that time, I was teaching myself the YouTube algorithms, and I started following Russell Brunson, and I was learning about funnels and things like that. And so I started to do some YouTube videos. I thought I would do negotiation in general. And I started making videos on like clothing color psychology and how to get a job and things like that. I was getting like 30 views on YouTube, like nothing much. And at the same time, somebody told me about narcissism, and this person had been a covert passive-aggressive narcissist. And I thought, what is that? I never even heard that term before. And so I'm voraciously learning everything I can about narcissism, not for anything other than for myself. But then I was still practicing law part-time, so I was still flying back to Florida a week, a month from LA. So I started applying what I was learning about narcissism to my cases. And lo and behold, it's like I discovered penicillin. All of a sudden, I start seeing movement in these people. And I thought, oh my God, I'm totally onto something. So in January of 2020, I do one video on how to negotiate with a narcissist. I had 300 subscribers on my YouTube channel at that point, and I got 700 views on that video. I thought, oh, okay, I'm totally onto something here. So I decided to create a course called Slay Your Negotiation with a Narcissist, and I came up with this acronym SLAY: Strategy, Leverage, Anticipate, and You. I decide, let me see if I can get the intellectual property on the word slay, which I was able to do. So I own that word. And I decide I'm going to go live with this course on March 11th, which I had no idea what's going to happen in the world at this point.
Yes.
And I do. I go live with it on March 11th. And I came up with this webinar, 3 Must-Have Secrets to Communicating with a Narcissist, which, by the way, is still my evergreen webinar.
Love.
And by January of 2021, I had over 100,000 subscribers on my channel. I know that for sure. And I had made $1.1 million on that course.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So
Yeah.
let's talk about this, because one thing I love about your story, Rebecca, is like you were learning all of these pieces of the puzzle, but we weren't quite sure exactly how they were all going to fit together, right? You're learning YouTube algorithms, you're learning funnels, you're learning about digital courses, you're learning about all these things. And isn't it interesting to think too that you could have gone with an entirely different lens, hit a totally different market or no market at all, and how you kind of uncovered like, wait, this is getting traction. This is proof people are interested. This is where I can go. Walk me through what it's been like since you published that first video on YouTube, saw that traction. Did you go hard? Did you go deep? Like, how did you kind of let the people speak of what they're most curious about and help that guide your next steps?
Well, it wasn't so easy, frankly, because at first when I saw that hit, I thought, oh, I don't know if I want to be the narcissism queen, frankly. Yeah, it wasn't so easy for me because when I saw that first one hit, I thought, okay, I definitely need to make more content around that. But then I thought, I don't know if I really want to be the narcissism queen, like it wasn't like I really wanted to be negotiation. Like that was sort of where I wanted to go. But then I thought, well, let me just make 8 videos on this. And I had talked to my brother was one of the founding executives of a company called DoubleClick, which is a digital course. A digital company, which it was originally purchased by Google a long time ago. And so he was like, just ride the wave, he just thought ride the wave. And at the time he was in the middle of a messy divorce, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just do this for a little while and just see how it goes, so, and it was really, honestly, when I started, the other piece of it, frankly, was I wasn't really ready to talk about my experience with having been in that relationship, because I thought, how did I end up there?
Yeah.
It was kind of shameful for me. Because I thought I'm supposed to be strong. I was supposed to be this badass attorney. How did I end up there? And then I thought, I need to get over this blame and shame, and I needed to really let people know that they don't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attach themselves to you because you have so much. And they're really good at what they do. you know, they're good at mirroring you. They're good at love bombing you. And and it's not just a romantic relationship. It's business relationships. It's all kinds of relationships. So I wanted to let people know that it could be anybody, you know? And the more authentic and vulnerable I got, the more traction I got. You know, and I couldn't be anybody but myself because, you know, I at least I try to be the same, you know, here and here, you know. I want to believe that I'm the same if we're having coffee or if we're having this conversation, you know, on a podcast, right? And so I wanted people to know that it can happen to anybody. And the more I did that, the more views I started to get and the more people I started to help.
What did it feel like going from that like very powerful position as a lawyer to this more like vulnerable, authentic person? You're no longer necessarily representing other people and their stories. You're telling your story. And I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, that is so hard. I know so many entrepreneurs who just want to hide behind their work, right? Where it's like, look, but don't look too close. But I do think that you touched on something, that authenticity and that vulnerability is what connects human to human. And the fact that you are this strong, powerful woman and this still happened to you is a sign that it, again, can happen to anyone, and it likely is. And so what did it feel like kind of putting on that new identity of like, okay, I can be me and I can tell my story and it can be received? How was that experience?
It was hard. At first, it was really hard. I mean, honestly, I, you know, but the more emails and messages that I got, the easier that it got, because I truly get, I mean, now it's thousands, but they come in every single day, literally every day. I have a full team now of VAs that answer my emails and texts and DMs, that it's literally full time of people whose lives we touch. And my head of sales, actually, she made the point that the people whose lives that we're changing, it's not just them, it's generational. And when she said that, I literally got chills down to my core. Let's talk about the one thing that I was dead wrong about when it comes to narcissists. So let me just start by saying this. I am a lawyer. I spent a lot of time litigating very high conflict, high net worth divorces in my previous life where I practiced all the time. And I really had to grow into that role because it wasn't in my nature. I was raised by a Chinese doctor. I was raised to always do the right thing, be a good girl, toe the line, do the right thing, you know, everything I'm supposed to. So it really didn't come naturally to me to stand up to people and be in their face and be part of, you know, that whole world of conflict. A lot of people don't like conflict. I'm definitely one of those too. And so for me, it's always kind of takes me aback when people are immediately able to get right into conflict. And narcissists thrive on conflict. That gives them narcissistic supply. They love to get people going and they love to goad people. They rile people up. I've never been that type of a person. In fact, I'm always shocked when people do that to me, you know, where they immediately just want to cut me off, or they immediately just want to say things that are fighting words or whatever, because that does not come naturally to me. That is not something that I would have normally ever done. I've always been a peacemaker. I've always been wanted to keep the peace. I've always been, you know, even in my own family, I try to be the peacemaker. I joke that I'm a Libra. So, I like things balanced. I like things to be, everybody to be happy. So when I realized I was dealing with two different narcissists in my life, one in my business life and one in my family, I had to really figure out this personality type. And it was really, really hard. The hardest part for me is what I'm going to tell you what the one thing was that I was dead wrong about. That is that I thought that I would be able to somehow keep the peace, keep good terms. And even in the business relationship that I had, I still thought, okay, even if we're parting company, we'll still be able to be on good terms. We'll always be able to at least be cordial to each other. And every time I've had to deal with a narcissist, I've tried this. And I actually just had to deal with this with somebody who was in my work organization this week, a narcissistic personality. And I tried very hard to say, let's not make each other wrong. Let's wish each other well. Let's continue to support each other and continue to lift each other up. And here's the thing that I was dead wrong about. You're not going to get that with a narcissist. You're not going to be able to wish each other well and go off in the sunset in your different directions and run into each other and still be for each other and have it all be good. There's no peaceful resolution when it comes to narcissists. There's no handshake and potentially continuing to have a friendship or something down the road in some relationship. There's no closure. You don't get that closure where you each say to each other, geez, I'm sorry it didn't go better. I could have done this better. I'm sure, I forgive this from you. I shouldn't have done this. You're not going to get that closure. You're just not. And it's so unsatisfying sometimes. Like, you just want to say, like, why do you have to make it like this? Why do you have to make it so difficult? Why do you have to scorch the earth on the way out? But that's what they need to do. They have to turn it into this thing, because with a narcissist, you're either for them or against them. And if you're against them, then you are public enemy number one. They have to feel like they're taking you down, and they need to get that supply from you one way or another. And there's no supply to be had in wishing each other well and just moving on with your lives. There's not. And so here's what I want to say to you. Stop trying. It's not going to work. It just gives them supply when you try to do that. And you don't want to give them an opportunity to jerk you around. So you're not going to get that closure. You're not going to get them to see you, see your value, see your side, see what you contributed, see how good you were to them. They don't care. All they see is that they're not getting supply anymore. They have to make you wrong. And if you agree with me on this, by the way, give me an agree in the comments below, because I know you guys have been dealing with this too, and I'm sure you have seen this. I do want to also mention that I have a whole video on my own story with narcissists. And so if you're interested in that, you can definitely go check that out. It's called, I don't normally share this, so you can check that out if you want to. But they want to make you public enemy number one. So they want to take you down first. They want to make sure that you look bad before anybody else makes them look bad. They want to continue to get some kind of supply out of you. So do yourself a favor, let go, stop trying. They will suck your soul. That's what they have to do. They are blood suckers. They're energy vampires. They have to, troll on down the road to find the next source of supply. And they're not going to give you the satisfaction that you want. Unfortunately, wishing them well doesn't give them anything. So let go of that idea. Let go of closure. Let go of thinking that you're going to be able to say goodbye on good terms. unfortunately just doesn't happen with narcissists. And I really, really tried. Well, I'm going to actually say, I think there's actually a very fine line between being a doormat and trying to keep the peace. And that's another big lesson that I've learned in this whole thing. I thought that if I could just be kind enough, good enough, caring enough, that would be enough. And that even if there was an end to the relationship, that part of what I had done would be seen. But what I found was that a lot of times, if you don't call them out on their behavior, you don't allow them to, or you continue to allow them to treat you in a certain way, they just see that as you being a great source of supply because you're not saying anything. You're allowing them to get away with their behavior, and you're continuing to give them attention, money, adulation, respect, whatever it is that you're giving them. And they just resent the fact that you're not continuing to give that to them anymore. They don't appreciate what you've already given them. So it's not going to happen. So stop trying. Just let go. Put your attentions toward people who actually deserve it. Wish them well and forgive them from afar. Just not for them, but for you, so that you don't carry around all that anger and resentment, because that's not going to serve you. You know, the old saying, like, carrying resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to feel the effects. So wish them well from afar and wipe them from the CPU of your life and move on.
Okay, so let's talk about what silence does to a narcissist. They don't like it. That's like kind of the short answer, but let's talk about the long answer. So, what makes a narcissist tick? Well, narcissistic supply, they're kind of like one-trick ponies when it comes to that. Most people are motivated and incentivized by many different things. Narcissists are kind of like rats in a maze in some ways, because they like narcissistic supply. They need to be fed. They need that ego to be fed, right? One of the ways that they get that ego fed is by getting you to be baited. They want to see you squirm. They want to see you get all emotionally riled up. How do they do that? Well, they do that through text messages, through emails, through in person, but they like to bait you. They do that through pushing your buttons, through saying things that they know are going to upset you. And they do that as entertainment, but also to use, your reaction against you in litigation many times, especially if you have like a family law case with them. They will use your reaction to say, look, there's the crazy one, there's the emotional one. They also enjoy it because they get a constant source of supply. They also don't like silence for a number of reasons, because it also means that they don't have control over you anymore. It also means that you don't approve of them anymore. And it means that maybe you're slipping away from them, and they don't like that either. So there's a number of reasons why they don't like the fact that you are no longer responding. So if you're now not taking that bait, mind you, they do this all the time. This is one of their favorite little ploys. They love to see you squirm. This happens early on with them. Early on with the love bombing, they're like flooding you, 50 text messages a day, emails, showing up constantly. Oh my God, I can't live without you. Oh, and then all of a sudden you're doing the same thing back and nothing, or they use it as a method to control you. But if you try to do this back to them, they do not like it. It means that their control is over you is slipping away, and it can trigger that narcissistic injury in them. And so
they're now afraid that you are either abandoning them, they've been slighted, that you're withdrawing, that their control is slipping away, that you are disapproving of them, that you are putting them down in some way. The whole thing of ignoring them, the thing that they do not want. They don't want you to slight them. They don't want you to ignore them. Or they imagine all the worst things. Maybe that you're cheating, that you are telling everybody all of their worst secrets or whatever it is, especially if you know things about them. They will probably not necessarily react in a good way. During the discard phase is when you see the birth of that smear campaign. And, I have other videos, by the way, on the different phases of a narcissistic relationship. That love bomb, the devalued, the discard phase. That discard phase is where you start to see the birth of that smear campaign, and this is where they go to other people and start to try to line up their armies, sometimes called flying monkeys, to make you look bad, make you feel like they've got all these people lined up against you and for them, make you feel more isolated, to make you feel like the world is going to be on their side, not your side, that everybody's going to be believing their lies. They cause a lot of damage that way, because they'll oftentimes lie about you or what happened. A lot of times they actually will create a lot of noise to deflect whatever it is that they actually did, to make it seem, like you are actually the much worse one, to make a lot of noise around you. What can you do about it? I say, step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. In other words, you got to turn this thing around. You're turning the ship around. You don't want to keep running. You don't want to keep being on the defensive. You got to start turning it around so that you're on the offensive, because otherwise you're going to constantly feel like you are at the effect of the narcissist, and they're going to continue to run the show. The only way you can turn it around is by stopping being on the defensive and go on the offensive, so that you can finally break free. But obviously you can't do it all in one day. They didn't condition you all in one day either. So you have to do it in baby steps. And the very first thing, step 1, don't run, is to start creating some boundaries. And those boundaries are going to have to look like, I'm not going to allow you to speak to me in a disrespectful tone anymore. You're going to have to start changing your passwords on things. You're going to have one form of communication. I definitely recommend that form of communication be in a way that you can track, that it has a time and date stamp. Text is not a form of communication that can be tracked. It does not have a time and date stamp. So, I recommend that it's email. If you have children, you can use some sort of app, some kind of court-approved app. If you can get it turned into a court order, that's even better. So, Talking Parents, Our Family Wizard, things like that are all fine. But step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. This is where you can start to turn it around. Little baby steps, where you have brief conversations. Keep them very, very brief. I say making a plan, Stan, where you have a plan. When you go in to have a conversation with them, have a plan, have an agenda, have a scope. When you hit that time limit, you just say, oh, sorry, I gotta go. I have to take a shower. I have to go to work. Whatever it is, get in and out of that conversation. Create leverage. Have strategy, leverage, anticipate, focus on you. That's my SLAY methodology, which I talk about in my SLAY program. This is what you need to have. That's how you start to present it in a much more effective, positive way. And that's what I teach you when you are negotiating using my SLAY program. It's a way for you to be strong. It's a way for you to be powerful. And it's a way for you to be able to finally break free. So start creating leverage. That way you can start speaking about it in a powerful, positive way. So step 3, break free. Start to feel your power. Start to be able to walk away. I want you to write break free in the comments right now, because you're going to be so ready to break free. Remember, they're always the worst right before they're ready to give up. They're like toddlers having a tantrum. Toddlers are always the worst right before they're ready to give up. And so we're narcissists, you know, they're like toddlers, you know.
Let's talk about what's going on with narcissistic hoovering and those 5 signs of hoovering. So what is hoovering anyway? So hoovering is, it's either you've already gone into the discard phase of the narcissistic relationship, which is kind of like the end of a narcissistic relationship, or sometimes, you know, the discard can be starting like long before you're actually discarded, or you've discarded them. But you're into this phase of the relationship, and yet here they come back again. Here they, you know, it may be like it's been a year since you've heard from this person, and out of the blue you get a text from this person. And, you know, it may look like an attempt at reconciliation, or it may look like an attempt at actually valuing you again, or maybe they're finally seeing you for who you are. Maybe they're finally you know, appreciating all of the things that you did for them. But it's really what it is a manipulation tactic. It's a way to get supply from you again. It's a way to, it's a very toxic way of getting you back under their web of control. So the first one is that they reach out because they are in a time of crisis. Oh my gosh, my father-in-law is sick, or my best friend is in the hospital, or I just, you know, had a health scare, something like that, where now all of a sudden they're in crisis. And so you have to come back and you have to feel sorry for them. You know, for some reason, there's something going on with them that has put them into victim mode again. Maybe it's a financial crisis, you know, and you are the only one who can help them. You're the only one who they can talk to, that they can go to. And this is after they've treated you terribly, were horrible to you, you know, weren't there for you ever. And now all of a sudden, you know, you're the only one who can help them. And they're in massive crisis mode, meltdown mode, and you've got to go running and be there for them. And you're supposed to just set aside any bad blood that ever took place, or you're supposed to just forgive anything that they may have done to you, because, you know, my gosh, don't you have a heart? You know, they're in crisis. Don't think about any of that right now. Just be there for them. I mean, don't you have a heart? You have to come back and be there for me. So that's just one of the signs that maybe you are being hoovered. Another sign that you're being hoovered is that they're declaring their undying love for you, or they're apologizing emphatically. So this is where, you know, you've said, okay, enough already. That's it. I'm done. You know, maybe they've broken it off with you and you were like, okay with it. But regardless, you know, they start seeing that their supply source is actually walking out the door. So now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I love you so much. I can't live without you. I am so sorry. I will do whatever I need to. I will change for you. And this is where you might start seeing the narcissist faux apology, which is they say sorry just because they need to. And if you want to know more about the narcissist faux apology, you can check out more about that in my video called Do Narcissists Ever Say Sorry? You know, and of course they do say sorry sometimes. And you see this more from the covert narcissist, not as much the malignant narcissist or the other types of narcissists, but covert narcissists are the more smart, cunning ones. They're much better at covering up their narcissism. They're much better at looking like they are so perfect to the world, except to the person that they have targeted and who have been their victims. I know because the couple of narcissists that I had to deal with in my own life were both covert narcissists. And if you want to know more about covert narcissists, check out my video on the covert passive aggressive narcissist. They are insidious and very stealth, very under the radar. And so these are the ones that you're going to see, say it coming back and saying, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. I never should have acted that way. You had every reason to be upset, and on and on and on. But then of course, once they apologize and they get you back into their web of control and you're back where they want you to be, then whatever it is that they promised, whatever it is that they said they weren't going to do or were going to do, that just flies right out the window and you're supposed to forget about that. And then when you bring it up, now you're just being difficult, you are being disrespectful, you're just bringing up the past, you're just trying to make it, you know, bring up stuff and be overly toxic toward them, when all you were doing was saying, hey, how come you didn't fulfill your promise to begin with? I mean, it's so messed up with that. But that's another sign, which is of hoovering, which is that you start seeing, you know, them running back to you, declaring undying love, and maybe even apologizing. So the third thing that you'll see is these random texts, these random gifts, and you know, these can happen. You know, I was talking about this a little bit in the introduction to this video, but these can happen like even long after you've no longer been in contact with them. Suddenly, out of the blue, you get a text message like, oh, watching our favorite movie, thinking of you, or something like that. Or I just had our favorite dinner, wish you were here, you would have loved it. Or maybe out of the blue, you'll get a birthday gift, something just shows up at your door, and suddenly your heart stops. You think, oh my God. I know I was hearing a lot of stories about this at the beginning of COVID, where people who thought that they had finally gotten that narcissist out of their lives, now suddenly a basket shows up at their house thinking of you. Here's masks and hand sanitizer and you know, something like that. Like, and this is the kind of thing that narcissists are so good at, because if you go to tell somebody in the outside world, hey, this person just left a basket at my door, and they're like, oh, what was it? Was it a dead rabbit? Oh no, it was hand sanitizer and face masks, and you know, and you think, well, what's wrong with that? That sounds pretty nice. But you know, as the person who has dealt with narcissism, and I know this is something that I had to deal with, it's like, that's not what it's supposed to be meaning. It's supposed to be like a warning sign almost to you, or it's a way to suck you back into their web of control and becoming that source of supply to them again. And so like this chill goes through your body and you think, oh my God, I definitely do not want to hear from this person ever again. I definitely don't want this stuff from you. Please just go away. Please just get out, get away from me. Or sometimes it's like cruel in a way because it took you so long to get over this person, and it took you so long to finally not be thinking about them anymore, and then boom, there they are, showing up again, showing up in your text messages, or showing up through an email or something like that. And that is another form of hoovering. And if you have seen this, or if you've been a victim of hoovering, give me an OMG yes in the comments. And the next way that you know that you're being a victim of hoovering, or that you've been a victim of hoovering, is that you start seeing them showing up in random places. So, you know, all of a sudden, there they are at the grocery store that you always shop at, or you start seeing them at the gym that you go to, or at the yoga studio that you go to. And it's like so random, but not random. Like, oh, there you are. I didn't know that you shopped over here. You live on the other side of town. I remember that actually happened to my husband by his ex-girlfriend like 20 something years ago, back when we were first starting to date. And his ex-girlfriend would just be like showing up at the most crazy random places, like where he would be studying for the bar, and she would show up at this library that he randomly decided to go to that wasn't even near either of their houses. Like, oh, hi, just happened to be here, you know, something like that. And again, like that chill goes through your body, like, oh my God, there they are again. Or the other thing, the other way that they start randomly showing up is that they start becoming friends with your friends, or friends with your acquaintances. This is something that one of the narcissists in my life also did, was when this was an extended family member. So when my husband and I decided that we no longer wanted to have contact with this person, or tried to minimize the contact and have very strict boundaries, now this person was starting to you know, suck up to other people in our lives and suddenly become friends with people in our world, so that this person would be able to kind of like spy on us, and also sort of like try to show us how wonderful this person was, or that we are so wrong because see, the rest of the world sees how wonderful this person is. So that's another way of demonstrating hoovering. And the last sign of hoovering is probably the scariest sign. And this is where you're going to see a lot more about, you know, you'll see this much more from like malignant narcissists. The malignant narcissist and some of the more, you know, pathologically mentally ill narcissists will start stalking you. And I mean, yes, showing up randomly at the grocery store and saying hello is one thing, but really stalking you, and really, you know, doing things that they know are not, where they're not going to get caught, but you know that it's from them. So things start showing up in your mail. Maybe you're getting phone calls or emails from random numbers, random places. You know, I've seen clients where their exes, you know, knew a lot about cyber, you know, information, and they were able to create random emails that came from random IP addresses. And so, but, you know, and they would leave these messages, but it was really, really hard to trace these emails, or really hard to trace these texts, things like that, where you just start to be really scared for your life and concerned for what this person may or may not do to you. And in addition to the stalking, what you might also see is like a gaslighting move, which is really kind of like a sixth thing, which is like, oh, this discard never happened. We didn't agree to break up. We didn't agree to no longer be in each other's lives. One of the like more bizarre things that I've seen with narcissists is that you've had this horrible breakup, and then they come back and they start making comments on your social media or other people's social media, where something's been posted about you and they say, oh, you know, this is so great and you're so wonderful. And they just act like that thing that happened between you or the long history of things that happened to you never happened. So it's kind of like a gaslighting of the discard phase. So those are all the different signs of hoovering. It can be really confusing, especially if you're working so hard to get over that trauma bonding. And if you want to know more about trauma bonding, check out my video on trauma bonding. But you've tried so hard to get this person out of your brainwaves and out of your neuronal patterns and trying to move on. And you've gotten so far down the path and you're finally making progress and you're finally getting to a point where you're getting on with your life, and then here they come again. And they do that because there's still some supply to potentially be sucked out of you, so they come back. And remember, even seeing you squirm, seeing you upset, seeing you you know, angry, emotional, they get supply from that too. So regardless of you know, even if it's not just thinking that they're wonderful, they do get supply from seeing you upset. So if there's any amount of supply to be had still, here they come hoovering back into your life again.
So another phenomena that happens that you do discuss in the book is what you call negative advocates. And, you know, I've actually heard this termed the flying monkeys of the narcissists, that always brings to get to the Wicked Witch of the West and her cadre of monkeys that go after Dorothy. But many of our listeners are dealing with these collateral people. It's not just always the high conflict personality person. They have their negative advocates. So can you delve into this a little bit?
Yeah, it really seems to be part of high conflict people. They collect advocates to speak for them, and they often are family members, but they often also are friends, co-workers, and even professionals. A therapist could get hooked in as a negative advocate. A lawyer could get hooked in as a negative advocate. And usually how you can tell is they're so strong, they're so emotional about, they're kind of the knight in shining armor for the person. And what we realize is they're emotionally hooked, but uninformed. And I've seen people like that come to court in court cases. And because there's a series of hearings for some of these issues, suddenly they vanish because it's around the time they start realizing the person they've been advocating for is actually the person who's engaged in the worst behavior. And partly because of that, they're constantly seeking new negative advocates because the old ones often drop out. But however, I would say in family law, one thing that I see consistently is that the negative advocates in high conflict custody disputes are often the grandparents. And they're often paying for the custody dispute because the parents may have exhausted their funds fighting over everything else. And so it's important for family members to be a positive advocate, which means that you provide information, support, but you don't take on the role of fighting for the person. You really can't work harder than the person that's going through the divorce. And likewise for professionals, when you find yourself working harder than your clients, there's something wrong. You can't work harder than your clients because then they're not working and you're just spinning your wheels. So don't become a negative advocate, but don't be surprised if you see them and have to deal with them. And the key to dealing with negative advocates is the same way you deal with high conflict people: connect, help them analyze, respond, set limits, but emphasize providing information because they usually are uninformed. And you can say, you may not be aware, or aware and here's some information. So that's the way to deal with that. But don't be surprised by it. People are often shocked, like, oh my goodness, they've persuaded this other person in my life to be against me, and now they're attacking me too. How could this happen? And it's an emotional process, and it's because emotions are contagious. And that's why people become negative advocates.
Well, and also don't be surprised when the negative, when the high conflict personality acts like a high conflict personality. I mean, I had a client one time, 2 years into litigation, call me up all upset. Can you believe he did this, 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 and this? And, you know, this whole thing that happened at the schoolyard that morning or whatever. And I said, yes, I can believe that because I've been hearing about him for 2 years. I can't believe that you can't believe it.
Right, right.
Yeah,
So,
the behavior doesn't usually scale down as
Yeah.
the litigation process goes on.
Yeah.
right. Expect them to be that way, but never call them that. Don't say you have a high conflict personality, you're a narcissist, you are crazy, right? Because
Just have what I call a private working theory. So you can think to yourself, oh, he's narcissistic, therefore I need to do this, this, and this, rather than, oh, he's a narcissist, so I'm going to call him a narcissist. That doesn't work.
What
yeah,
I
because the
think
narcissist isn't going to go, oh, you know what? You're right.
Yes. If that was going to happen, it would have happened 30 years ago.
Right.
Well, the phenomenon I see so much lately is where perhaps people are not going directly to their ex to say that they think they're a narcissist or a high conflict personality, but they post it all over their social media. My ex is a flaming narcissist, and he does this or she
Yeah.
does that. And they put it out there. I'm pretty sure it's going to trickle out to their soon to be ex.
Yeah. And it increases their defensiveness and their being difficult. So it's better just if you say it to anybody, have one person and have them keep it private.
Yeah. Your therapist would be a good person.
That's a
Yeah,
good
your
choice.
therapist, your priest, your rabbi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.